It's Words and Music with Mike Delevante for WMOT Roots Radio here at Riverside Revival in our new studio.
It is beautiful, folks.
So good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Totally. I love that you have a new record. Long time coming.
First time ever.
I know. Late bloomer. Late bloomers.
Some of us are slow.
us.
We're real slow. Yeah.
Well, you've been busy.
I've been busy. Yeah.
You've been doing stuff.
Yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun and worked actually walking distance from here. Made the whole record at Middle Tree Studio, which is Joe Pisapia's studio. And you can actually walk from here. It's about 3 doors down.
Yeah, no. That's so cool. I read the instructions. There was a listening party.
Yes.
And where you park is virtually right across the street from where we are.
I think he says park here.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So we're both East Coasters, and it's so interesting to be called to Nashville. I felt called here.
I think I did too, and the way I got called here was somebody saw us play in New York from here. It was a guy named Jody Williams, who's from BMI, and he saw us play a little radio show at the New Music Seminar, and he said, "You guys should check out Nashville." And we played, and we were playing around New York a bunch, and New Jersey, and we had a good following, but industry-wise, it wasn't kind of, we were a country band in New York, and then we came down here and we were a rock band. So, somewhere in between New York, I don't know, was that Virginia? I guess that's where we should have landed. But anyway, we came down here just to visit and ended up just feeling called here. But I think that was 1993. And I feel like there were a bunch of people that landed here either from L.A. or New York around 1993. What year did you come here?
Well, I started coming here in 75.
Oh, okay, you beat me.
But
out.
I didn't live here
Yeah.
till Lightning hired me in 97. So that was actually the first time that I lived here. Mm-hmm. And then I left to go to XM, and then, I
Sure.
had, a Texas stop, a New York stop, and I came back almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So happy to be back.
Glad you're back.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
And so I have this recollection, and if this is wrong, let me know, of being at Lightning and having you guys up in the conference room.
You talking about the LNC Tower?
Delevantes.
The
Yeah,
LNC
the
Tower?
LNC Tower.
Yes. Because I think we did something at the 2nd Avenue, maybe before we moved here. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we were up at, it was the top floor.
Yeah.
Amazing view. Yeah, I think we played live, and I think we did some interview stuff there, maybe with Peter Rodman. Not sure.
Yeah, could be.
Could be.
Delevantes were so interesting to, incorporating close harmonies, obviously. There's so many brother bands that have populated the universe of country, whether you talk the Everly Brothers or Luvens, so that's such a treat to hear.
Yeah.
There's just something so easy about it. And you guys were the first #1 on the new Americana chart, which, launched in 1992.
Was it 92?
I think so, yeah.
I remember being called by Rob Bleetstein to come to New Orleans to play a Gavin conference, and then we all packed up and came to that. And John Grimson, I think the two of them might have worked on that together. I'm not sure. And John Grimson, I think, was doing some work with Rounder, and he was working our records with Leslie Ruffet.
Yeah,
it's all full circle. But yeah, I think we were the first debut band to go to #1, and I think from what I remember, the idea was there were all these amazing artists falling through the cracks that were the Guy Clarks and as far as radio went, John Prine and Emmylou Harris, and so it was a home for that kind of music.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I looked at it as album-oriented country,
right.
which really wasn't a moniker. I mean, there was progressive country, which is out of Texas, and
sure,
incorporated a lot of Texas red dirt, but it wasn't a thing yet nationally. And having the Americana moniker allowed this to kind of become its own entity.
Yeah,
it took a while.
And if it was a different time frame, I think old friend that plays with me, Gary Talent, said that if Bruce came out now, he'd be an Americana artist.
We played Bruce.
Yeah.
And actually, I had that when I went to XM, I had that conversation with my boss. I was like, one day, Bruce, Bonnie, John Mellencamp, Dylan, they're all going to be played on my station.
Yeah.
And that is indeed what we do.
Right. And that's the music of our youth. Billy Joel, even. I think early Billy Joel would probably be on
I haven't dug
MMT.
into that corner yet, but
Well, some of those first
Yeah.
couple records are, amazing
for
singer-songwriter
sure.
records.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a great world to be in. So, what precipitated this album at this time?
Well, it started as I was writing for the next Delevantes record. We hadn't done anything for 20 years. Both Bob and I have a background. We both went to art school, and so we had kind of gone full-time in the music world for, 10, 15 years. And then we were on Capitol, and stories that there are more stories in this this show could
Major
handle.
label cha-cha.
Yeah. And so, we said, hey, I'm going to take a break from that. And I kind of went to doing I was painting a lot. I was doing design work, and Bob was doing photography. Anyway, long story short, we did that for a while. And, but, it always felt creative to us. So we were always sort of in that world. Plus, we were living in Nashville, so close to, friends that are musicians and songwriters, and we would get up and play and do things all during that time, play on friends' records, et cetera. But we got a call from Rolf Sweep, who's at Blackbird Academy, and he invited us to do one of those sessions, and we went in, and I didn't really have any songs, but Bob had some songs, and we went in, and then we co-wrote some stuff and made a record, and that's the one that came out. That was sort of a pandemic project. We cut that right before the pandemic, and then we spent that whole time doing overdubs, et cetera. And that sort of got me back into it, and then I started writing a lot, and I think what happened was I started writing, and it was the most I've ever written by myself, and I started finishing these songs, and they started to feel a little bit different, I think musically and thematically. And it felt like something that maybe I'd want to do by myself. And then I called up Bob and I said, hey, and we were busy with scheduling anyway. And I said, I'm just thinking I might do my own thing. And he's like completely encouraging, you should do it. Because he's got a couple records on his own too. And so I ventured into that world and started to finish some things. And then I called up an old buddy of mine, fellow Jerseyan, I just knew he was great, but mostly I called him because he's just a really good friend. And I said, I've got a couple things, and I want to just hear them. What do you think? And I went over to the studio, and next thing you know, we started making a record. And then I kept writing, and I think between a 3 or 4 month period, we cut about 13, 14 songs, and then mixed it, and then. I'm making the story longer than you probably want to hear it, but it's also, I played it for just a few people, and one of the people I played it for was an old friend, Tamara Saviano, who has worked with the Guy Clark group. And
with a brand new label.
Right, brand new label called Truly Handmade. And she didn't get back to me for like 2 weeks. I thought, man, it's probably terrible, But anyway, she was traveling. She's always going back and forth to Austin, and then she called me and she said, I just listened to this. And she said, I pulled over the side of the road and started crying. I thought, oh, my God. And it just sort of hit her, and she said, I want to put this out on our on my label. They were mostly doing Guy Clark stuff, but I think she decided to sign some other artists, Lindy Ortega, am I saying it right?
Ortega.
Jack Barksdale, and Jed Hughes, and myself. So that was great because, she's such a good friend, and I thought it would be fun to put something out with her, So we worked together on getting it finished up, and she has a thing with the Orchard, so they're working the digital side of it. So
that's awesome.
It comes out this week.
Yeah. Where'd the title come from? September Days.
A lot of these stories started hearkening back to growing up in my hometown, and and I'd said this earlier, I think the seasons seemed to pop into my head, these big life changes that felt so monumental when you're a kid, going from, fall to summer, and, summer into, back when we were in school, the seasons were so defined. It was like Memorial Day, Labor Day. It was like, it's different now here, you know. And those were just big things in a short, your short little life back then. And it just reminded me of stories of relationships and friends and wannabe girlfriends and all that stuff. So it just sort of kind of started to revolve around those themes. And one of the big ones was all those things that happened, you know, around school. And all these schools. I went to like 6 different schools as a kid. And just because I grew up in Rutherford, and there were these, it was all Irish or Italian Catholic. So most families, no exaggeration, had 6, 8, 10 kids. We only had 2, which was different. But there was overcrowding in schools, and so they had to like break up these schools, and you had to go, you know, 1st through 4th here, 5th and 6th here, 7th here, 8th and 9th here. And so I went to all these different schools, and they just all had these personalities, and that seems to be this backdrop to so many things that happen in your life. And, you know, I'm going up to this event this week, and I've got such good friends from high school I've kept in touch with. And you think about it, 4 years is such a short period of time, but it becomes like this backdrop to so many things that felt seemingly important, probably not that important, but, you know, and all those stories came to me. And so anyway, I would say that, and the fact that we were finishing the record during the fall, and it just sort of hit me, and I just, and that's the title track to one song called September Days.
What are you going to play for us?
First song we're going to play is The Rain Never Came.
You want to set it up?
I could set it up. You know, this came to me, and, you know, I started a lot of these songs more musically than the words, and I started to talk about, like, in the chorus, about, like, all these things that happen right before it rains and right before you have this anxiety, and we have anxiety in Nashville with flooding and tornadoes and hurricanes and everything. But what sort of stuck in me when I started to finish this up was that I think I was probably on Twitter, and I was reading all this crap that's on there, and it was all these people using religion and politics to scare people, you know, the World War III stuff and choosing the end date. Now, I know stuff sucks. I know it. But the people that use what they think are the Bible to scare you into saying, like, end times, here's the date. How many dates have we heard that just come and go? And so then the title turned into, you know, all these things are happening, but the rain never came. You know, it's like, I guess I was angry at people using religion to try to force their political narrative at you. Because what I do remember about going to Catholic high school is, biblically, the Bible says that you will never know the end date. So most people that are predicting the end date using the Bible are not actually reading the Bible. So that's all I remember from my Catholic
That's a good lesson.
school. Yeah. You don't know. You just don't know.
Let's listen to it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks for having us, WMOT. My name's Mike Delevante. This is Joe Pisapia. To my right, Gary Talent, Brian Owings. Thanks for having us. First song we're going to do is The Rain Never Came. And this is for all the doomsayers out there that are sort of predicting the end of the world and using politics to get their agenda across. Yeah, stuff's tough, but the rain never came. Whenever you're ready, Brian.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
I'm used to the waiting, but it was never like this. I was yesterday's ready to get it over with. We drew up our best plans and watched for the crowd. We raced station, there was nothing to say. We tried to put it together again, it was never the same. Clouds unfolded, lightning scolded, the wind blew me away, but the rain never came.
All right. Next song we're going to do is a song, and I seem to pull the seasons in a bunch for a song. So this one's called Good Cry. Anybody has any money in the stock market, today's your day.
One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's why they call it a good cry. It's harder to realize if it's night or it's day. You tried, you fought the good fight. You can't be on both sides. It's a give and take. Every few miles, every once in a while, there's a time or a place where you need a little rain. It's late, it's time for a reframe, maybe a lane change instead of riding it out. Every few miles, every once in a while, there's a time or a day when you need a little rain. You don't need a reason why they call it a good cry. I don't need a sunny day. What's the matter with the rain? Okay, Joe. Every few miles, every once in a while, there's a time or a place when you need a little rain. You don't need a reason why they call it a good cry. I don't need a sunny day. What's the matter with the rain? You don't need a reason why they call it a good cry. I don't need a sunny day. What's the matter with the rain? Joe Pisapia on guitar.
Nice.
This song I wrote, start to finish, driving in a car, remembering all the words as I go. True story. parking lot. Radio dispatch, quick snack, cracker jack. Redneck, bottleneck, rear and trailer wreck. Far along, too far gone. Far along, too far gone. Right, Joe. Far along, too far gone. Too far along, too far gone. Rest stop, gas up, fill up my coffee cup. Two-lane, fast lane, exits coming up. Brake pass, drive fast, this is my last chance. Stop by, start again, try to catch a tailwind. Far along, too far gone. Far along, too far gone. Far along, so far along. Far along, too far gone.
Too Far Gone. Mike Delevante, our guest in the studio for Words and Music. WMOT Roots Radio. What a band.
Thank you.
All A-list, baby.
I'm lucky. I've made a lot of good friends, but that's Nashville, you know. I mean, there's so many great musicians here.
You want to talk about who was on stage?
Sure. Gary Talent is an old friend I met down here on our first trip. The actual trip that I was invited here by Jody Williams, my brother and I drove down here and spent a week. And we got super lucky because Steve Earle was playing at the Cannery one of those nights. And we went and to the show, and we were watching the show, and then Gary Talent got up on stage and played with him. And it was like, I mean, we had Guitar Town, and we were such huge fans. And to see, and obviously growing up in New Jersey, Springsteen fans, to see the two of them together, it just blew our mind. And we were like, this is Nashville. If this is Nashville, I'm moving. You know, by the end of the week, we had decided to move. But we met. He came up to us that night, and we just started talking, and we met, and you know, we've been friends since 1989. A lot of people think we met in New Jersey, but we actually met here. And And he has played and or co-produced pretty much everything except for this record, which he was on the road with Bruce, so, worked with Joe. Brian Owings is a drummer that I first saw at that same, this is how my brain works. I first saw him at the New Music Seminar. He was playing with Will and the Bushmen, my old friend Will Kimbrough, and I thought, and that band knocked me out. And Brian just was such a great drummer, and then I'd seen him play over the years. And when we were getting ready to go out with Emmylou Harris back in the late 90s, we went to Europe with her. He joined us, and then we've been great friends ever since. And then Joe Pisapia playing guitar, and he and I played the guitars on the record. Yeah, he's such a great...
So cool.
So cool. Such a great guy. Such a great human. So that's who I've been playing with lately. And then the show last week, we added on a few folks, Jen Gunderman and Audley Freed.
Love.
Yep. And Jamie Dick, who also played drums on the record, played some percussion. Will Honecker is the only person I haven't played with yet, but he was the other bass player that played on the record when Gary was on the road. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to have great musicians.
I want to do a then and now, because obviously, the early days of moving here was electric. It was incredible. I mean, It was Webb Wilder and Jason and the Scorchers. There was, all of that was going on at the same time, How does it feel now? What's going on as far as the musicians that have moved into your purview over the course of the last few years?
Well, I think it's great to drop by some of the clubs like the Five Spot and see younger bands doing. It's just feels great to still see that going on. I don't know if it's the same way. I think when you're in your 20s and single, you're at a club every night. Certainly downtown's changed a ton. I mean, I remember the early days, I'm sure you do, the BR 549, parking in front of the club and walking in. And I mean, the downtown Nashville had that sleepy southern downtown, stores like sort of closed, sort of open, not, that whole thing has changed. But as far as musicians, I feel like all the musician friends of mine are still here and still playing, still working, whether they're playing in stadiums or they're playing in little clubs. But I think what I always thought about Nashville was there was such a sense of camaraderie and focus on creativity. I can't say that it wasn't exactly like that in New York. I think New York was a little bit more competitive at the time. But I remember the first time playing in Nashville and looking out and, having a great audience. And most of the audience were other songwriters or other musicians. And you thought, I mean, there was like, just this sense of, belonging. And I felt like there was a home and a community here. And that really, both Bob and I never left the East Coast during college years and working when we were younger, and we just never lived a different place. So coming down here and finding this, and we were both single, it was like, this feels like a nice next, step out place to live. And then we just never left. I mean, because the community offers so many other things. I mean, I did think when I started doing work in the art design world, I'd probably have to go back to New York or have to go to LA or something. And I never did because, Nashville started taking off too. Started getting more and more crowded, for better or for worse, than, that makes you busy and work-wise. And, so it just seemed like a great place to, start a family, get married, start a family. It's such a great community here.
I think it really speaks to the ancillary things that one can do in the music business to, sustain you. If you're a session player, there's publishing deals, maybe not as much as there used to be, but there are ways to make a living and then have your band, have your, that joy of being able to make your music.
Yeah, I'm not sure about what's going on with the publishing. It must be a lot different now.
I'm sure it's different now.
But when we first that was the first thing we landed was Warner Chappell publishing deal, and they paid us on a draw. And then here we were like, what do we do now? I mean, but we were signed as a band too, so they weren't expecting us even to write with other people. So our typical day was like, you know, you get up, you look down at your guitar. We should get some strings. You go to Corner Music, you pick up some strings. You sort of maybe you write a song, maybe you rehearse a little bit, but then you know the next thing your next stop is a showcase because they would feed you free drinks, free. You know what I mean?
No, totally.
That's where it's all the other musicians, you know. And so, it just full fed into this community of people that just, you know, you'd see all the time, and then it'd be time for a show, and you do that, or you have dinner with friends. It felt like a campus in a way of all these different people. Now, I hope it's the same way. I think like I've been removed from it a little bit, just because I hadn't been playing for a little bit, but I'm back. Sort of feel like I'm back into it now. But I do seem to see some of the same people still out, you know, and you know, it's not like I was still in town, but. Again, I think it's really nice to see, you know, younger bands getting up and playing out and doing all that stuff, and I think that that's just cool to still see that.
I want to ask where you got the inspiration to be looking at Everly Brothers or earlier. Mm-hmm. You know, growing up in New York, I mean, the Everly Brothers got airplay. Sure. You know, because they were top 40. But when you start talking about the Louvin Brothers and you know, deep country stuff, there really wasn't much of an outlet for it in New York. You know, the New York environs that you could listen to and hear on the radio. So how did you get turned on to that?
Well, our first band, I'm going to use this loosely. We were a bluegrass band, and it just meant we had a banjo player who was good. But we were an acoustic band of high school friends, and what we realized early on is that we could harmonize, all four of us in the band, and that was really fun, but we were probably more, we always liked older music too, so we would, at the time, you know, learn old Searchers songs or Ronette songs or anything that had a lot of vocals, obviously the Beatles and the Monkees and all that kind of the things that we knew, and we were writing ourselves, so we were singing vocals, but Bob and I never focused in on Brothers as the harmony thing until you know, we'd gone through a couple of different bands. The bluegrass band that kind of sort of translated into an early electric band. And we sounded, a lot of people would say we sounded like we were in the Creedence Birds sort of way. We were doing, but pretty rocking with, you know, but with vocals, a lot of harmonies. It wasn't until Bob and I, well, two things happened. Bob and I probably just wanted to keep going more than the other guys did. And so we started doing our own thing. And when I was in college, and I wish I could remember the name of the teacher, but was art school. So, you know, you had to have humanities to get your bachelor's degree, but this was the history of rock and roll. It's not a hard class, but a great class. And he was a writer in New York, and he taught this class. And he took us, you know, really from the origins of what he considered rock and roll through to what was modern day. But one of the stops along the way, he made a point which I thought was really, had never heard of them, is he put the needle down on Make 'Em a Soldier by the Louvin Brothers. And I heard this interplay of vocals, and I thought, it absolutely was one of those moments I thought, I've never, ever heard anything like that. That sounds amazing to me. Got the record, had to go to one of those places that only sells these old records, you know, and at the time, you know, and brought it home, played it for Bob, and I thought, this is like, so we started writing towards that, and then started digging in more to the Everlys, because the Everlys probably listened to the Louvins, I would imagine, you know. And then we started to realize what we could do with our voices, and that's where that part of it sort of came into us sort of focusing on that. But we didn't do that when we first started. Everybody sang. But we did learn to harmonize, you know, 2- and 3-part, sometimes 4-part harmonies. So it really was that. It was that class where I was introduced to the Louvins, because that's just a whole nother level of that kind of vocal sort of interplay. So I think that was probably it. And then being forced to be the only one singing on stage probably made us do something. Yeah.
Where do you go next?
So, well, the record's just coming out now. I'm headed to New York to do a couple things. I've got a couple other interviews lined up, and everybody really enjoyed playing the show. So we're going to just see if we book a few more things and sort of take it from there.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm excited to venture into this world I hadn't been as a solo artist.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. But
It's been a while,
doing
even-
myself never.
Right,
so-
I know. But I mean, even the Delevantes record,
Yeah.
most recent was at 2019.
Yeah, and it was a pandemic record, so we
Right.
couldn't even get out and play.
Yeah.
We were doing all those live Instagram little shows and Facebook things, and that was fun. I mean, so yeah, we'll just see how this goes. We're everybody's really excited to play some more. Everybody in the band, so I sort of caught them all at a time when they were available, and that's been really fun. Yeah, it's great.
Well, I'm so happy you were able to come see us.
Thank you for having me. My favorite radio station.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. We're so lucky to have you guys. Not
Thank
just
you.
saying
We're
that we
so
are.
lucky to be doing it.
Yeah. And
You
what
know?
a town, what a time.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so much music that deserves to be heard.
I don't know how you keep up with it.
It just bombards
That's
against
right.
me.
That's right.
It's like I'm receiving signals from Mars at all times.
I won't bother you.
That's all good. I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, cool.
Mike
Thank you.
Delevante, our guest today for Words and Music at our Riverside Revival Studios for WMOT Roots Radio. I'm Jessie Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.